strengthen up and be able to address some of the things we discuss here so that it's clear cut, and everyone understands, and it's binding in the event something happens. We're all covered on both sides and everybody understands. So that's me.
Okay, I'm seeing head nods, so I'm going to go with that's consensus unless I hear otherwise. Powder, you have what you need? Okay.
When you say consensus, just to move forward and for him to finish the,
Yes, for
Language
him
and
to
stuff.
provide feedback from that discussion and for it to go to the regular meeting.
okay. And my suggestion is just, I would consider a little bit of a lower amount. 60% seems a bit high to me. Maybe cost of living increase, I don't know, 2.5% or something per year. That's just my 2 cents feedback.
And that's what we'll discuss at the next meeting.
Yeah, we still make the rate setting at the next meeting. Sound good? Okay, all right. Next up, FAR.
Madam Mayor, members of council, staff is presenting this to you this evening. This item is relative to zoning text amendment 2502. This is relative to the floor area ratio discussion that council has had, planning commission has had over the last year mostly. And this amendment would be to Article 20 of the zoning ordinance, which is the definition article of the ordinance, and it's proposed to add a definition of floor area ratio and modify the definition of a private garage. Next slide, please. So back in the fall of 2023, council asked the Planning Commission to examine options to increase the floor area ratio regulations in the R2 district. There'd been discussion from builders in the community about the need and desires of their clients to have larger homes within the town. And so the Planning Commission heard from staff and research from staff and actually had some public comment on it at their meeting, and they recommended at that time not to increase the floor area ratio, or FAR, in the R2 district. October of this past year, in 2024, there was a joint work session. Council asked the Planning Commission at that time to again seek input from the building community, as well as open up the discussion on FAR again to see if there could be any resolution, because we were still hearing from the building community that their clients were concerned that they couldn't build structures on the minimum, the 5,000 square foot lots that we have in town in the R districts. They weren't able to build a house that had an attached garage unless the living area of the house was limited to 1,600 square feet. And then if you had a normal, basically, two-car garage, that would make you meet the maximum FAR of 2,000 square feet for the .4 FAR, that is the regulation in the R districts. So the Planning Commission at their meeting in March held a stakeholder work session, and stakeholder input was received at the work session. Following that, and the Planning Commission and staff certainly appreciate and thank the stakeholders that were there. The meeting was very beneficial. There was lots of great discussion back and forth. Builders from the town came, realtors from town came, and citizens. And so there was a lot of great discussion back and forth to understand one another and what the needs were and what some of the concerns were. So on May the 8th, after a public hearing, the Planning Commission voted 7-0 to recommend approval of the zoning text amendment that you have before you, to you. And so next slide, please. At the stakeholder discussion, which I included in your packet, the summary of the stakeholder discussion that we had at the March meeting. But generally, the stakeholders felt like that, there does need to be a clear regulation. There was some confusion about, how this had been applied in the past and more recently. Also, they wanted to make sure that neighborhoods were kept compatible, that may be appropriate in certain areas and not appropriate in other areas. But there also were comments relative to, from realtors and builders about needing to meet the market demands for their clients. Next slide. So you have in your packet tonight the actual language for the draft zoning text amendment, and I'm just going to summarize it for you here. There is no increase proposed in the FAR standard in any of the zoning districts. In the R districts, the 0.4 FAR regulation would be maintained, would stay the same. It wouldn't be increased. But what we were doing and are proposing to do is to add a definition of the term floor area ratio. So that way it's clear, everyone understands what is included, what's counted. There's a difference between FAR and habitable living space. Sometimes that's been part of our discussion that we've had with builders. So the definition that's provided in your packet basically says the floor area ratio is the sum of the total areas of the dwelling or of the structure measured from exterior faces of exterior walls. So it's not, it doesn't take out the area where the HVAC unit air handler is and some of those kinds of, however, the third bullet on here, the definition of FAR would also provide that for single-family dwellings, an attached two-car garage up to a maximum of 526 square feet, or basically 24 by 24, would not count towards the .4 FAR. So it would allow the garages to be an attached garage up to a certain size. Like the whole first floor can't be garage, and you count that as I'm still meeting my floor area ratio. So it is limited to a certain size. It's limited to the two-car garage, as you see here. And then also, as staff was reviewing the FAR definition and involving the term garage, we looked at the definition of private garage in the ordinance and just made some updates to that definition for clarity. And those are noted in your packet with underlines and strike-throughs for those changes relative to the definition of private garage. Garage must remain a garage. And if not, then it counts towards the FAR standard in the ordinance. And a permit from the town for people that want to convert their garage, basically so that the zoning and staff can ensure that they're still meeting the .4 FAR. Next slide. Staff is requesting that council authorize advertisement of a public hearing on zoning text amendment 2502 for the council's June 18th meeting, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Okay, so all you're looking at tonight is for us to set a date for the public hearing?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, yes, Mr. Williams.
Question, did I hear it right? Did you say something about the first floor could not be, the entire first floor couldn't be a garage?
The first floor, I was making a statement, in other words, if you had a larger house, then you couldn't claim that whole area is a garage. And because of that, unless that area was 24 by 24 maximum, then that area could be a garage. But in other words, people couldn't just unfinish the first floor and say, oh, all of that's a garage. That won't pass the test,
Okay.
right?
And
Okay.
and currently, the detached garage, is that 24 by 24? Like what's allowed as a detached garage?
As a detached accessory structure, the limitation in the R district of the ordinance is a 20 by 20
20 by 20.
footprint.
So what was the difference adding the 4 feet? Just curious.
So, well, to reasonably accommodate a two-car garage. That's what we heard from the building community of the need. And so actually up to 526 square feet. It might be shaped a little different and not exactly based on the design of the home, 24 by 24. But it was just to give everybody, to try to give everybody in the definition and understanding of this is a maximum of 526 square feet.
Okay, and just a last comment. So technically, right now, they can only build on a 5,000 square foot lot, they can build 2,000.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. We'll hear from people on June 18th. Next up, Mr. Schaefer.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. You asked staff to put together basically a pros and cons list for going to monthly or bi-monthly water billing. And in your packet and up on the screen, you should see what staff has put together. So what we do is we tried to break it down. Next slide, please.
There's 71 slides?
No, that's the entire agenda packet.
Okay.
Mine is only 2 slides.
Okay.
So, what you see in front of you. No, Robin, I wouldn't do that to you guys. All right, so what we have is, basically the top shows you the feature, whether bi-monthly or monthly, and then quarterly. So the first one is revenue flow. If we were to switch to bi-monthly or monthly, we would get a more steady or predictable revenue flow. And if we stayed quarterly, we would still have our a delayed revenue collection, but a greater revenue collection when we do the collections. Billing costs is really an issue because if we had more cycles, especially going to monthly, we would take our billing costs very, very high. Obviously, lower billing cycles, lower billing cost. If we did go to bi-monthly or monthly, we would have the opportunity to detect leaks and problems faster. Obviously, staying at the quarterly billing, we would still have the same problems we do over detecting the leaks and problems as we currently do. Customer bill amount would basically be easier for them because the bill they would receive if we went to bi-monthly or monthly, they would be receiving a lower bill. If we stayed at the quarterly billing, kind of stays how it is. Even though customers do have the option right now to come in anytime, and we will take them to a monthly payment plan. We have lots of customers that come in all the time and do it. Let's see, customer communications. We would see the customers a lot more, meaning the customers would have to be in the office and mail in payments a lot more often. Obviously, staying at the quarterly billing, fewer touch points, less customer interaction, staff time and resources, higher, more meter readings, customer interaction, especially for commercial billing, because right now our commercial reading system or our meter reading system, but we would have to send employees out to those meters every month to get those readings. That's a lot of staff time. Obviously, quarterly billing is lower and more streamlined operations. That's it for that slide. Next slide. So, if you look here, if you look at the very top one, if we were to go to bi-monthly billing, it would increase our billing costs for postage and creating and then printing the bills it would increase our current cost to $7,821.36 to go bi-monthly. If we went to monthly, it would increase our current cost by $31,285.32. If we did go to monthly or bi-monthly, we would need more staff. Obviously, Public Works would need a dedicated person just to both meter readings and water and sewer cutoffs. Finance would also need at least a half a person just for the increased monthly traffic. Next slide, please. Okay. So this slide, we kind of changed a little bit after the fact. Staff is really suggesting that we stay in our quarterly billing cycle. We have sent out a survey to citizens, and the vast majority of them are saying leave it alone. The overwhelming population is saying leave it alone, we like it the way it is. Even customers who currently pay monthly, they don't want to get a bill every month. They want to get a bill a quarter, and then they can make a payment plan with us. If you all were to choose to go to a monthly billing, obviously, as July bills were already mailed out, so the first opportunity we would have is the October billing. And with the suggestion that if you all did choose to go to bi-monthly or monthly billing, not to implement that until at least January of 26, giving us the October bill to notify citizens. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Mr. Wood?
Yeah, a couple of questions for you, sir.
Sure.
First of all, for those who pay automatically,
Yes.
there's roughly $11 charge for each transaction. Now, I don't think we know what the transaction would be if the bills were pulled monthly or paid monthly, do we?
Well, it depends, because if you pay by a credit card, it is a flat percentage rate of 2 point, but if you were to pay by an ACH or a check through the computer, I believe it's a $2.95 charge per transaction.
Okay. The other question I would have is, are we going to be moving, if we did the monthly billing, that someone is delinquent after 30 days as opposed to after 90 days?
So we've talked this over with Public Works, and just for pure ease, we would really have, the staff suggestion would be is to do water and sewer cutoffs monthly to follow the billing.
Okay. So are, in many cases, already cutting it close? to-
We are.
Where they're looking, they don't have 90 days to catch up. They got 4 or 5 days to catch up. So
Correct.
for that reason alone, I think it's more, we have more of a messaging issue than a collection issue, because people can pay monthly. They still have that option. All this does, it really doesn't give the customer more benefits. It puts them in danger of having their water cut off quicker, and also adds a lot more cost. And I was kind of stunned when I saw your numbers there, of the additional cost it would be just to increase the billing. So I'm glad to hear that the public is deciding that they
Yeah,
don't
the
think it's a good
the
idea.
vast overall is saying leave it alone. I was actually even surprised by it.
Yeah, I was glad you guys did the survey and that we had an opportunity to hear people's thoughts about that. They want to leave alone, it's fine with me. I don't know how anybody else feels. Yes, Mr. Larson?
Just had a couple of questions. Your last slide said that you're in favor of the change despite everything we just talked about. Is that a typo, or is that what you really meant?
So we discussed that after the fact, kind of. Originally, that was our suggestion because we were directed to give our suggestions, and if we wanted to go to monthly or bi-monthly, staff was going to support that. But like I said, after the survey was done and the overall being to leave it alone,
At this point, so it's been 3 days, right? So we've had 105 responses, and about 70% of them have said, we don't want to move to a monthly rate.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like we're probably not going to do this, but I also wanted to ask one more question about the numbers. I didn't understand how bi-monthly could cost $8,000 more a year, and monthly could cost 4 times that more per year. That's, maybe it's irrelevant if we're not going to do this anyway. It seems like we're not, but just curious, how did that math work out?
because what it does is it takes us from, right now, we do 4 billings a year. If we went to bi-monthly, it would be 6 billings a year. If we did monthly, it would be 12 billings a year. So those numbers add up pretty quick.
I think what he's saying is the staff cost was also included in that. So you have to, a half of a person, that's going to cost money to include the cost of stamps or whatever else.
Yeah, okay, well, it's probably moot at this point, so I'll let it go.
Oh, just, yeah, question about the numbers.
currently charged.
Okay, because I'm assuming if we did monthly, it'd be,
No, we would not. The
We would
company we
not.
used we're very small. We're a very, very small run to what this company actually does on a daily basis. So,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
no, we wouldn't have any, unfortunately, we wouldn't have any leg room to move them in any direction.
okay. And then another question, you mentioned the billing now. How does that work? Like, they just call you up and say, I can't do
The
every,
monthly bill.
I
You
mean,
mean-
monthly instead of quarterly? They
So-
just say, like, I can't afford to do it, or that's too hard, so can I do it monthly, or what's?
Yes, so what's, anyone can do, anyone has the option to do, is come into finance and and say, I want to start paying my water bill monthly. And right now, I would tell them, yes, you pay $128 and some odd cents a